Yes, yes. Kaixo, ongi etorri, that's my Basque for you. Benvidos, that's my Galician for you. Those are my native languages. I wrote some remarks, and there's two reasons for that. One has to do with trying to give you some scientific reasons why what we heard in the video is the way of common sense. It's, in my opinion, the way of only having a viable future. But the second reason is more personal, and it has two aspects to it. One is that my first graduate student, when I spent my first year at UMass as a postdoc, was Gautam Sengupta, speaker of Bangla. So I was keenly aware of these issues back in 1989, and basically growing up, because I come from a crazy linguistic situation in Iberia, like the rest of the world. But this is very personal to me. And I was telling my wife before starting, don't tell me certain things because I'm going to cry. And so, because I don't want to cry, I want to read you some remarks, or at least go through them. I was lucky enough to be in the group of people studying around Noam Chomsky. And so I learned directly from him that there is a huge tension between two types of problems that he called Plato's problem and Orwell's problem. Plato's problem is basically how we can know so much with so little evidence that we get as children. And don't think just as children that go to school. Think about most of us that weren't born in a very school-oriented situation. We still know a lot. So that's problem number one. Orwell's problem is sort of the opposite. How we allow ourselves to know so little on the face of so much evidence. Now, this actually arises from different dimensions. One is an individual problem, a problem of language, and how come we acquire it so fast and so effortless. Whereas the other one is a society problem, a problem of misinformation and disinformation. How we allow ourselves to act in certain ways when there's so much evidence that what's going on isn't right. Now, for the first problem, for Plato's problem, we often say, well, Darwin gave us a way to study that. Part of the reason we know so much is because we evolved this way to be human beings. But even there are challenges. In fact, Wallace, who was Darwin's co-author, already had significant issues with understanding how humans know about math and music. We just heard a wonderful performance. How we know about ethics. These are not obvious traits to evolve for animals. Particularly, they're not so obvious if your only way of evolving is by breaking your enemy's skull, which is the basic story we were told about survival of the fittest. Now, interestingly enough, there is an alternative, and I'm not talking about creationism. I am a staunch Darwinian evolutionary person, but what happened in the 1980s is that more and more it became clear that in evolution, aside from competition, for survival of the fittest, you also have cooperation. And it was Lynn Margulis at UMass who pushed the idea that in order to generate something like the eukaryotic cell, which is what we are a collection of, you need cooperation. You don't just need competition. That's not to say that competition doesn't play a role, but cooperation does too. And more, I think we have become aware that it is through cooperations that some of the traits that the human mind has developed emerge in a very specific way. Why we are able to transcend certain notions that we wouldn't otherwise understand, why we are social beings. Now, It is true that our human story, what we heard about the last 70 years, which is my lifetime, these conflicts that we're talking about, they're not unique. They have been here since the dawn of time. Now, part of what I think we need to understand is that those tensions that do exist also exist in nature. And look, sometimes they are quite useful. We wouldn't be here without 65 billion years ago, having the meteorite that destroyed the dinosaurs. Bad luck for them, good luck for us rats, right? At the same time, I think while we need to be thankful for the serendipity that allows us to proceed and occasionally find an angle, we also have to realize that these tensions sometimes go one way, sometimes go a different way. Think of the continent Pangaea. At the time, right before, if the asteroid hit 65 billion years ago, you're talking a few million years before that, you had a single continent. It was a coincidence that it was a continent like that, and it soon started spreading into various subcontinents where evolution continued its divergence and where our different cultures eventually emerged. Right? Much later, of course, in the case of humans, we are nothing to write home about until a couple of million years ago in Africa, and then we start, in waves of tensions, we start spreading slowly and creating new domains. Again, part of the diversity that we are encountering, we were talking in the video about 8,000 languages. That's one count for today. Actually, if you look at human history, you're probably having twice as many, if not more, many of which have disappeared. Where does that diversity come from to begin with? What is it about human nature that makes us diverse from the get-go? There is no other way to explain why we have such diversity other than having it emerge as part of our very cognition from the get-go. So this is part of what I want you to think about, that without, and I know I'm diverging from what I'm saying, from what I wrote, because I think it is important to just proceed. The idea is that these tensions that we see throughout, in and of themselves, we can embrace understanding that they're here. But that doesn't mean that as a result of them, we should just accept impositions. We should just accept arbitrary renderings that say, well, this is better than that. On the basis of what is it better than that? Okay, so I think part of what the university can do for us is examine this puzzle of our human cultures and examine, in fact, from the Paleolithic and into the Neolithic, how we managed to be so diverse. And it isn't just, it seems, because we have so many continents. It seems as if it is intrinsic to our way of thinking as humans. I'm not trying to say, by the way, that we are the only animals with culture. By now we do know that there are other animals, including close apes, but even insects, which have forms of culture. But we thrive in culture. We find new alternatives through culture. So any thought that lack of culture, lack of diverse culture is better than multiple culture is just missing the point of how we evolved. It's just missing the point of the tensions that brought us here and gave us different alternatives as we crossed the different continents, the different deserts, the different seas, and explored new possibilities. Who are we to say this is the right way to go, particularly when the whole planet, now, again, a Pangaea at a global level, is at the risk that we are observing every day? Who are we to say, oh, we're just going to do it this way? Look, I believe in the scientific way, but part of what science teaches us is that we have to listen to the different perspectives. We have to hear the different perspectives. If we just don't allow them to come into perspective from the get-go, if we kill them as different languages, then we are destroying ourselves right at that get-go. We're taking our arrogance to levels that can only mean self-destruction, as far as I can tell. Now, this fact of multiculturalism, I think, needs no argument. It is multicultural. It has always been multicultural. And again, I also understand that we don't know why it is that we are multicultural. We don't understand what is it that makes us this way. You know, the usual I say either, you say either, I say potato, you say potato. Well, this is part of who we are. And part of what I'm trying to suggest to you is that it is okay to be that way. It is okay to make an extra effort to hear your potato or your potato. It doesn't matter. And of course, I'm using that as a simple example, but it doesn't matter with larger concepts than that. It doesn't matter with the different identities you bring to the table. It doesn't matter with the different technologies you attempt, so long as we put it on the table and we discuss it as rational human beings. That's the pitch that I'm trying to suggest to you. We have to be open-minded, of course. If they tell you that, you know, you live in a world where everything reduces to 6, right? You have, what, 12 months, you have 24 hours, you have hours of 60 minutes. You may believe that this is the way it has to be. Well, it's arbitrary, right? It's arbitrary. We thought that the world was going to live in a planet of 360 degrees. Well, we were wrong. It's a little bit more than that, and it makes no difference. So it is also important to understand what is arbitrary. And sure, you can count on 10 fingers. And if we had had 15, we could have had a 15-base system. It would be equally valid as a formal system. And as you know, those of you who are computer scientists, you can do it with 2. And you can get ChatGPT to work with 2, just 2 symbols. So understanding what's arbitrary and understanding what's fundamental is part of the critical intelligence we need to bring to the picture. It's part of what the university should be teaching us every day. I want to end with one note of, I don't know if it's caution or if it is just common sense. You know, it's impossible to give access to everybody unless we change the model so that everybody does belong at the table. I come from a very lower class. I have obviously an accent, and I'm very happy that I was given the opportunity to teach at a university, a major university like this. I'm very proud of that. Question is, how do we systematize that so that everybody has a chance? Everybody, including in our neighborhoods. Well, here's a simple thought. It makes no sense that Harvard University has a $55 billion endowment fund, while University of Maryland has a $1 billion in the system endowment fund. That's 2 orders of magnitude difference. We accept every year 4 times as students as Harvard does. And you could argue a similar point for Hopkins in our own state. Now, I understand that the system is a capitalist system. I understand that it's dynamic. But here's a simple thought. If we do want everybody at the table so that we can listen to the different voices, how about having our own state of Maryland incentivize donations differentially? Just as they have differential tuitions, that they do have, why don't we have the state of Maryland say, well, if you're donating to a public university, you have a bigger tax break. Now, that sort of idea is going to be necessary for us to be able to continue offering education, continue offering our space to everybody, because everybody should belong. What I'm trying to say to you is really boils down to those 2 ideas. Diversity isn't just an ideological point, isn't just social justice. Of course it is. But in addition to that, it's the way of the future. It's the way that we are, and it's the only way we really can survive. If we want to give Plato's problem a chance, we have to address Orwell's problem. We have to be informed enough in how the system works to say, no, a democracy should open all these barriers for everybody, and it starts by giving access to every single brain, because every brain counts. Thanks very much.